Welcome to this episode of the Shine Counsel. Today we're talking with Debbie Collaros. She is a psychologist from South Africa, practicing for 19 years there and 2 years in Australia, specialising in relationship, marriage and adolescent counselling and trauma. And she also has a special interest in using technology and its relationship to the therapeutic relationship. Welcome to the show today, Debbie.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Debbie. So we'd like to start first with a couple of questions like, just tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit more than what we've just shared now, just how you've come to be who you are and why you are the therapist that you are out there in the field.
Okay, well, I think in terms of the background and why I became a psychologist, I think it was observing the breakdown in my own family, and so I developed a real heart and passion for helping the family home, particularly the marriage, because I really do believe healthy marriages creates healthy children. So that was always first and foremost my passion area. So most of my practice life I have been working with relationships and with marriage. And then also dealing with adults in an individual capacity, because dealing with their personal issues also impacts the marital relationship and vice versa. So I also have a particular interest in helping adults who've had previous trauma and how that kind of continues into the marital relationship or the family home or their role as parents, and trying to help them remediate from that and create a healthier next generation. But I also did do a lot of trauma work, being in South Africa, being in Johannesburg, and with our hectic crime rates and the stress that people are under, and hijackings and break-ins and rapes and murders, and was sadly quite commonplace there. And that also is probably what propelled me, I've always had an interest in forensics, but to go and do a PhD where I interviewed some of our serial murderers in prison. And the system just, there's so many problems in the system as a whole. That creates for such a violent society that as much as I had a passion and interest in the work, I myself, who had such a need for my kids to be in a healthier home and to have healthier sort of expectations about the future and feeling safe, because we had our own fair share of criminal experiences that really traumatized both of my kids. And that was probably what got us to make the move to Australia. But it's still a passion subject for me, and I really would love to get involved with the correctional centres here in Australia, even though the nature of the crime is a bit different. But I mean, violence is violence. So I think I just always wanted to make a difference. I think initially as a psych student, you always want to first help yourself, and then a lot of the students fall away after that. But for me, it was, I'm going to continue and I'm going to help others. Although I must say it wasn't my only interest, I was also very interested in drama and film, like you, Renee, and also very interested in advertising. I actually wanted to be a vet from a very small age, and then I went and worked at our local vet for a holiday, and then I was crying every day and said, my darling, you're not going to be a vet, you'll never cope. So they were that, but I'm very passionate about animals. I think it's always about the underdog. I'm often called the defender of the nations by people that know me, and I hate to see injustice, and I'm very much a defender of the underdog. So I think I just want to help people be the best version of themselves, be as functional and as healthy as they can be in whatever way I can leave my legacy, not just as a therapist, also in my personal capacity, just who I am as a person.
Great. That's fantastic, and it's really good to hear that, because I can really relate to that as well, fighting for the underdog. I have a question in regards to, I guess this is the reason we ended up getting you on today. And most of the people we get on the podcast, we invite on as guests, rather than people actually asking us on. And I guess my interest in having you on today was really because of what you had to say about technology. So what I'm also interested in, if it's okay with you, to just have a chat about the work you presented at the conference. That would be good to hear for everyone listening in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, the conference was specifically geared to counsellors and psychologists. And so my starting platform was to say that technology, like anything else, is something that can be very neutral. It it's dependent on who's using it and for what purpose. And so as therapists, we first and foremost need to be very clear about our role and our position as therapists, as psychologists, counselors, in terms of what we're actually trying to achieve. I mean, what is our actual goal work-wise? And then basically you have the liberty of making use of technology to serve you towards that end in a way that makes your life easier, makes life easier for the clients, and streamlines that process. And so it's not about whether we have technology or not. It's more the argument of, number one, understand your role and what you have to do. Then you take technology and you superimpose it on that and see, well, okay, does that technology support that end or doesn't it? If it doesn't, it's got to go. It can be part of the rest of your life, but just not in therapeutic capacity. If you can use it, as in you may use it according to the rules and legislations or whatever else, then the next question to ask is, well, can I use it, as in ability, not in may I? So it's, may I use the technology now? Can I use it, as in, do I actually know how to use this technology? Do I understand it pretty well? And I think that's where we talk about the digital immigrant versus the digital native, that for the children who've grown up with technology, that doesn't even seem to be an issue. If they become therapists, they know how to use that stuff, and it's quickly workable for them to see if they're going to make use of it or not. They would just need to be sure that they may use it. But for the older generation, certainly my generation, we didn't grow up with technology, it's not just a case of may we use it, but then we also have to ask, do we actually know how to use it? Because if you don't know how to use something, then surely it's not helping you. And in fact, because you don't really understand how it works, and there's a lot behind the scenes that you can't see, it's not a tangible thing that you can see, you can actually inadvertently create a lot of damage or a lot of breach of privacy, confidentiality, etc., which breaks all the codes of therapy. And then you should rather abstain and not use it. And of course, if you are going to go ahead and then use technology, the third point I really emphasize is that then you are obliged to inform your clients. Anything that we involve our clients with in our work, informed consent is a big thing. So if you are allowed to use technology to assist you in your work, that's great. And if you can and you know how to, that's great. But then you'll be responsible with it. But then you also need to make sure that you inform your clients. And so the suggestion is that you create a social media policy and you add it to your contract, where you just give them the rundown on what can be used, what can't be used, why, and just give them some understanding from the client's point of view of why this is the case. Because we can't expect clients to understand that in a world that's very technological, that somehow it's like a taboo thing in the therapeutic world, without giving them an understanding of why that is. And overall, it isn't a taboo thing. It just depends for what situation and what type of technology. So you don't have to get really specific, but it's something that maybe they just need to be alerted to the fact that, this is a professional relationship. It is a one-focused relationship. So we are not therapist, client, and we're friends. Therefore, any form of social media would be inappropriate, purely because, not because we don't want to be friendly with you or we don't like you or anything like that, but because it's a professional relationship and it needs to be boundaried. And, it's really important, especially from a therapist's point of view, that if you get access to any information about your client through any form of technology, so it's not heard one-on-one, that they've volunteered that information to you, come across it accidentally or on purpose if you're Googling them. If you come across that information, it's very interesting. I had a conversation with the APS not too long ago, and the explicit comment that was made to me was, it makes no difference how you find out. If you are the therapist, you are now liable and responsible for what you do with that information with the client. If you believe a client at midnight is feeling suicidal because they've just put some really horrendous post up on Facebook and you've now gone and read it, you cannot plead ignorance. You are a therapist both in and out of the therapy room 24/7, which some therapists disagree with, but it's very sobering because you realize that while you're in an awkward position, because now you've got to contact that client and do a duty of care, but you're going to have to very sheepishly explain to them how it is that you even know that they are in that state because you've been, stalking them online. You stay away from that stuff. So you don't want to be, from the therapist's point of view, you don't want to be linked and be in trouble for that and have such liability on you. But also from the client's point of view, you need to be informed that really we do it only for your benefits. It's not to sideline you or to reject you or because I care about you, that's what I had to say to a client recently, because I care about you and I want to remain objective and as professional as possible with you to help you, I don't even want to be tempted to cross that line and view you in a more familiar capacity, because then I'm not doing you a service. And certainly if we become friends, and then down the line, and I have to be honest, I have a few people from South Africa who were my clients over 10 years ago, who some of them live in Australia, some live in New Zealand, and as a result of me emigrating, I've actually become friends with them on social media. So now we are in a friendship capacity, and I've made it very clear to them, if they ever require therapy in the future, it can't come from me, because now we've crossed that line and we are now in friendship capacity. So, yeah, and I think the APS legislation actually says that within 2 years of somebody being your client, you should actually not engage with them in that sense. I would say it should actually be forever. It was unusual circumstances for me to move countries and then reconnect with people I've known once before, albeit that they were clients. But that should not actually be, I would rather say, make it a rule of thumb that you don't engage in the friendship capacity with even previous clients.
Yeah, that power imbalance is still there, isn't it? That differential in power between the client and the therapist relationship is always going to be there. To some extent, there's some of that energy, I think, that hangs around.
Yes. And you might end up like I do. I end up going to school meetings and I'm seeing ex-clients there, and go to church and you've got clients there. And, on the one hand, yes, it seems very nice to join their friendship circle, but it's a very, exactly like you say, it's a very unequal relationship. You have a lot of information on them, and that can make it very awkward for them. And so to spare them, you just don't even allow them to go there, because they might not know what's coming, that it might get awkward or difficult. And sometimes you just can't help it. Sometimes you'll be on Facebook and a link will come through to connect with somebody that knows someone and it ends up being a client. And so you can't almost not see, but going and delving into it, joining, linking up with them, and then going and looking at their profiles and seeking information is a very deliberate act, where that's where the APS hold you accountable and say, look, if you come across information, worrying information, then you can't pretend you didn't see it. You actually have to do something about it. Of course, you could lie and pretend you've never seen it, but then I think you sit with all sorts of issues and conscience as a therapist that you don't want to have that. You don't want to be pretending you don't know things that you do. It could slip out in session, and I think that would be disastrous. And you don't want to come across like you're stalking your clients. That's, if you've got a particular reason why you've had to go and look up something, again, you need to inform your clients. If, for example, I say to my client, look, you left the session, I said to you that I was very concerned about you from a suicidal point of view. You refused to have someone come fetch you, and you said you'd be fine, and you went home. And I was so anxious about it that in the evening I actually went and looked you up to see if you were still posting, if you were still alive. I mean, I'm not suggesting that people do that, but I'm saying if that's what you felt strongly to do, then you absolutely need to inform your client of that next time you see her or him. Which is awkward, which is why you should just stay away from it, bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all really interesting fodder for our work if we work online like I do and Narelle does as well, and in terms of how we kind of manage these, because certainly the associations are out there and they're trying to come to terms with all this technological information and trying to give us codes, but yet at the same time they can't be watertight because technology keeps changing, and that's the issue, is that technology keeps changing.
That's why I think a social media policy is also very important, in stating that, look, as far as I am aware, and that we are aware as a culture, as a nation, and as a world of what these things can and can't do, we are all taking a risk by doing it. And give your clients the license if they say, look, I'm not prepared to take that risk, then, well, fair enough, that's informed consent. Because should something backfire and now suddenly there's a newscast saying, well, actually, we all thought this was secure, but it's not, and that's something to do with your practice, you are at least covered in terms of, all right, you inform them of the risk as well. And it's not just a risk to the client, it's definitely a risk to the therapist. That's what I'm saying to therapists. Don't be so gung-ho to go flying into technology if you don't know what you're doing. Don't prove yourself to be cool and out there. Keeping up with your CPD points is important in your profession. That means you're ahead of the game. Keeping up with technology is not necessarily the case. It depends if it serves you or not. If it doesn't, leave it alone. Unless you really feel it's got a great benefit, then make sure you go to someone like you, Renee, who teaches online skills with this type of counseling, and make sure you're equipped. Like anything, we don't know how to do anything we're not equipped for. Why would it be any different in the area of technology? It's incredibly irresponsible to not equip our young and upcoming counselors to not have, technology training. And for those of us that have already done our exams, I really believe it should be mandatory that we now, if we're going to use it, that we go back to school and we go and get a thorough teaching and education on it. As much as technologically, the technological world is aware of it, because it's still a very young compared to therapy. Therapy is older than technology.
Yes.
So it's still trying to catch up to us in some way.
Yeah. And social media itself, I mean, the rules are always evolving with Facebook. I mean, I know some therapists have multiple profiles on Facebook, which is a breach of Facebook policy, but it's a way to try and walk around that not forming dual relationships in a way that's social media friendly. And that's an interesting one too, I guess, in the context of Facebook groups, because a lot of, and I certainly know as a counsellor and coach, I spend time in there, and that's part of my marketing strategy, as does Renee, as does a lot of coaches. Probably not so much counsellors, but a lot of coaches do that. And you start to get these issues of breach of privacy of clients. You start to get these issues of dual relationships forming because, group leaders are promoting the friendship ahead of the professional relationship. So what have, I know you presented, I think it was the ACA conference, wasn't it, that you presented this, that's right. So what are your thoughts on how to actually manage that, I guess, if you're in that Facebook group space, even if you know how to drive Facebook as a therapist, where do you see appropriate boundaries as being?
Well, you see, I'm fortunate because I practice under a different surname to my married surname. So I was always been able to have two separate profiles. But I guess people, as they get to know you, it's easy for them to breach that, I guess. But in terms of the Facebook groups, I think that's a very valid point. And I have actually discontinued speaking on that forum because I don't have a problem with therapists letting therapists know what they all do with the areas of speciality, because it's a networking. And I suppose for laymen going on there, I mean, they get to know who does what in the area, which is fantastic. But just like the three of us would not sit and discuss our therapeutic work with other people within earshot, how much less so on Facebook, where here are therapists talking about their work, and especially when they are trying to canvass a therapist for a client that they need to refer, have got to be so careful how they do it, because they give such long, elaborate descriptions of these people. The world is a small place and people know people, and sometimes it's really like weird pathology that really not many people would have it, but you might know someone, and now you really kind of advertise who that person potentially is. And instead of saying, look, I'm looking for the therapist that works with adolescents and deals with trauma or whatever, they are describing this 22-year-old or this 18-year-old, and he's got trauma, and he was recently kicked out of his school, and then he was raped, and now, I mean, it gives so much information. I think a good PI could probably track down who they might be talking about. That's a terrible breach to clients or potential clients. So yeah, I think those groups, again, those groups they definitely have their pluses, but I think there needs to be some learning and structure and boundaries or limits in terms of what is allowable and what's not. It really just boils down to ignorance. I really don't believe most people do this deliberately, obviously. It's ignorance, which is really why I think we just need to be educated on it. That's all. And in terms of the breach of Facebook, I'm far less worried about breaching Facebook's policies than I am about my personal work versus friendship or whatever. But I mean, it has also become a problem for me, because I'm going to be, people start to make the connections between those surnames. And so a lot of people do know what my married name is. I really don't have an answer to that. I think the only safe answer would be that you'd have to discontinue one of your groups, or you would just get yourself an absolute only website and not be on Facebook, and just use Facebook purely from a friendship point of view. I don't really know what the get around is of that, to be honest. I guess because I know that I can be viewed from both, I'm just careful about what I would post of a personal nature, that if it's something I wouldn't be comfortable for my clients to know, I probably wouldn't post it, because there's all likelihood that they might be able to get hold of it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, this is all interesting fodder, and I guess we're getting to the point where we probably need to wrap it up in a minute. Narelle, did you have a final question?
Look, I think one of the important things to come out of the conversation that we've had with Debbie today is understanding from a client's point of view, because a lot of therapists, we have some training, we are bound by professional association standards, and I know, Debbie, you've talked to the APS standard of a 2-year minimum before any personal relationship might develop between a therapist and a client. So we are technically across that as trained professionals, but if someone was a client of a therapist or thinking of seeing a therapist, and maybe they've been put out because a friend request got rejected, or the therapist didn't accept a Snapchat or cracked it because they followed them on Twitter or whatever, what would, I guess, the final piece of advice you would give clients in that circumstance is?
Well, I think, again, because we always talk to the therapist about not taking on requests, etc., I think clients also need to be well informed, from just like you are helping them and equipping them and educating them about all things psychological. This is one of the things that they also need to be equipped on, and that is that even though they might really be fond of you or want a relationship with you, you want to point out all the potential pitfalls that they might encounter if they do that, like the fact that, yes, they might have a relationship with you, but it might fall out, and there's this completely, non-equal kind of power play that happens there. And also, if they do require you in the future, then they are not going to be able to come and see you, and you might be in the same circle of friends, and you're respected and you're a professional, etc., and they were your client, and now it's viewed as, well, obviously they had the issue because you're a professional psychologist, so obviously the breakup of the relationship was to do with them, or whatever it is that it might be. That I think the clients need to be, it's not just to protect ourselves, but they need to be informed about the risks that they're taking when they engage with technology in a therapeutic setting, and certainly with the therapist themselves. I think that, I think above all else, one of our mantras is that we do good, and that they need to understand that all we are trying to do is that we want what is in their best interests, and they might not even be able to know beyond the therapeutic situation what is in their best interest, because they don't have practice or experience with that. And that because we deal with other clients, we need to gently come alongside if it's something that they do desire, and to say, look, you really got to think about how this will impact you in the future if you ever need therapy again, or what happens if we have a fallout, or I will always be seen in a more kind of empowered position, etc. It would be great for me, but it's not fair to you. And as your therapist, I've got to give you the best, counsel in terms of this, that is not just for when you are my client. It's that we don't just do good to our clients while they are our paying clients, but we want what's in their best interest going forward. And sticking to our role as therapists in their lives is the best way that we can help them. That is the bottom line, because we can't control any other relationship with them. I can control how I will be as a therapist to you, Narelle. I can't control how I will be as a friend, as a lover, as a business partner, and this is what I had to tell my client not so long ago, because he said, all right, if we can't be friends, then he said, all right, he's going to set up a business and he wants me to come run it with him. I said, well, what kind of business? And he said he would like to educate the masses, on psychoeducational issues. And I said, well, that sounds fantastic. But again, I said, I can control my boundaries and everything that I am with you as a professional therapist. You have no idea what I will be like as a colleague or as a business partner. And if it backfires, because our relationship started in the way that it has, there's this unevenness, from the get-go and continue on. And I said, and I care about you as my client, and I want to be available for you ongoing. So I'm going to just have to decline and say thank you very much for considering me. It's a fantastic opportunity, but because of my care for you ongoing, because he said, but you're very passionate about psychoeducation. I said, yes, but not in business with somebody who's been my client. And I had to be very gentle and polite about it. And of course, you know, the fact that he wanted to be friends and business partners, I mean, between you and I think it was probably a romantic interest. But again, you can't assume that, but you just, it's again, and even if it was a romantic interest, I'd have to say again, look, you don't know what I'd be like as a potential partner. I can't protect you because then we are equals and then I have my full say, and the best way I can be of benefit to you is for me to retain my role, and that's what I want to do. And it's not a rejection, because I think a lot of therapists battle to confront their clients on these things because they want to come across as very accepting and caring. These people have come from backgrounds where they've been rejected or hurt, and the last thing you want to do now is be a fellow rejecter. So you've got to punt it from the client's point of view. It's not in their interests. That's why you won't do it.
Yeah.
I guess it's almost a bit like the doctor who's got to, you know, pull the plug. You know, euthanasia is such a debatable subject. But on the one hand, really wants to hear the patient and be there for them. And on the other hand, feel I don't have the right to end your life. And it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And look, thank you for that. I think really, you know, in a nutshell, that sort of speaks to you can't remain objective with dual relationships. So you can only have that one relationship and manage that power imbalance responsibly and stay objective, as opposed to subjectivity when it becomes something else. So
that's
thank you.
What we're trying to do. That's what we're best at doing.
Yeah, and look, hopefully any clients who are feeling rejected and dejected by their therapists can hear that and not take it to heart and take it personally and understand it's actually out of respect for them more than anything else that we do.
Exactly it.
And when we involve technology, it might add to a potential for boundaries and boundary discretions happening.
Yes. And not through really our own fault, because that's the nature of technology. So we might not intend it, but the potential is there.
Yep.
That's the worry. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good point to end on. So thank you, Debbie, for
thank you.
Coming in to chat to us today. It's been really great to have you on, and just great to hear your perspective, but particularly the perspective of a psychologist as well, because Narelle and I are both counsellors and therapists and coaches, and just different perspective, but also how it's seen in the psychological world as well, and just that slight different perspective. It really helps to kind of add weight to this argument. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. It's been wonderful chatting to you.
Thank you.